Are you kidding me? Not my chikorita!
Let me take you back to one of the best games of all time, Pokémon Sapphire. Back when I was 10 playing this game, I stumbled upon this little guy. Now, I had no idea what it would turn into, so I said, why not? Imagine how surprised I was when it turned into a cool dragonfly and then a sick dragon with goggles. 10-year-old me was pumped, and Flygon instantly became my favorite Pokemon, my sidekick, to this day. And what blew my mind was, someone made Flygon. Someone poured their blood, sweat, and tears into making those beady little eyes. And that's true for everyone's favorite Pokemon. All Pokemon really just started as a sketch in someone's notebook. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh great, another video about how Tajiri loved bug collecting and how Sugimori designed the first 151 Pokemon. And yeah, there's some of that here. But also, let's talk about the people who don't get talked about enough that are probably actually behind your favorite Pokemon. If there's anything I learned researching for this video, it's that designing Pokemon is a team sport, and so understanding who's behind our favorites means understanding the creative minds that came together to make them. So yeah, Ken Sugimori joined Satoshi Tajiri and Junichi Matsuda in 1989 to found Game Freak. After pitching this fun bug collecting idea to Nintendo, development for what would become Pokemon Red and Blue began. Ken Sugimori is like the guy for Pokemon design. He shaped the look and feel of all of the original Pokemon, but actually he didn't design all of them. There was a small team of under 10 artists that worked with him that helped build the original 151. Aside from him, these were some of the key players. Atsuko Nishida, for example, is famously credited with designing Pikachu, probably the most iconic Pokemon ever, and a bunch of other cute characters, a specialty that gave a completely different energy to her designs. Shigeki Morimoto was a programmer that designed the original battle system of the game, but also designed the secret legend Mew. Now, Sugimori did draw all of the official, final designs after approval, and kinda ended up acting like a filter in the process, unifying the style and Pokemonizing it. His influence is even bigger than that though, and it becomes clearer as the generations pass. It's his overarching philosophy for good Pokemon: balance. In his view, adding something uncool to a cool Pokemon or cheerful to a serious one is the key to making a Pokemon feel memorable for the player. Sugimori was probably going around handing out this advice as the designs for even the original 151 were getting proposed. And the team of artists weren't in a vacuum either. They were all working with an 11th designer that they had to listen to: the Game Boy. The technical limitations of the system more than influenced design, it demanded it. The Game Boy was just 160 by 144 pixels and had a whopping 4 colors: black, white, gray, and gray. Not just that, the processing and memory only left room for simple animations that took a few frames. Think about trying to bring your vision to life with that constraint. Designers had to create creatures with bold outlines, basic shapes, and not too many colors. And the process with the first few generations was actually sprite first and then concept art. Fujiwara, Eevee's designer, and Nishida talk about this a bit, how they only really thought of the design in monochrome pixels since that's all the sprite could have. Masuda talks about how circles were hard to draw. So, with those boundaries, that 11th designer definitely shaped the designs of early Pokemon. But after Red and Blue became a smash hit, it paved the way for the entry of Nintendo's next system, the Switch 2. The Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Color was a massive upgrade on the original in one key way: the color. The 4 monochrome shades of the Game Boy became 32,000, even if the display shades were still limited. And the second generation of Pokemon, Gold and Silver, took full advantage of that with more vibrant designs. One of the flagship Pokemon is literally a rainbow bird. And with a new generation of games came a new generation of artists and staff at Game Freak too. By this point, Red and Blue had sold millions of copies and was a worldwide phenomenon, attracting talent from all around. Newcomers joined the team to inject new energy into the design process. Pokemon designs wouldn't be what they are without a rotating cast of new designers with new passions and perspective. Sugimori talks about this in an interview with Iwata, how newcomers come with interesting ideas and balance out the collective wisdom of the veterans. And he actively pushed these newcomers to test the boundaries of Pokemon design too. They cooked. Celebi, newcomer. The legendary dogs, newcomer. The legendary Dunsparce, newcomer. And like Sugimori said, it was balanced with the collective wisdom of returning veterans like Nishida and Morimoto. And this dynamic between new and returning designers with Sugimori at the helm became a recurring theme as the generations passed. Gen 2 also introduced a huge addition with the Dark and Steel typings, which was a balancing decision that influenced design decisions. That's another key part of this equation, the design ecosystem at Game Freak. Pokemon design isn't just an artist sketching a cool monster and then boom, into the game. It's a conversation between the whole staff, mainly artists, planners, and directors. Artists pitch designs based on creative visions, planners decide how they fit into the gameplay, and directors make sure it fits into the game's broader vision. And that conversation can flow any which way. Planners can suggest designs to artists, directors can suggest mechanics to planners, and everything in between. Remember her? Without the planner, Koji Nishino, who literally inspired Snorlax by the way, pushing Nishida to revise Pikachu again and again, it probably wouldn't have been nearly as iconic or cute. And sometimes, instead of a design being made first and then the move would be made by the planner, and then a design would be suggested from there. The point is, what you get with all of this is an efficient system of checks and balances, making for the best designs for that specific game. And that system of freedom and collaboration makes answering the question who's behind your favorite Pokemon even more layered and difficult to answer. Let's look at what happens after Gen 2. Water, water, and more water. Ruby and Sapphire gave us maybe the best Pokemon region to this day, Hoenn. It was based on the director Masuda's childhood trips to visit his grandparents in Kyushu, where he got to play in the rivers and the forest, a huge change of pace from his Tokyo home. Hoenn is nothing if not diverse. Cities, forests, volcanoes, oceans, you get the idea. The region feels alive and basically laid out the blueprint for what the Pokemon designs that would inhabit it looked like. Of course, that meant a bunch of water-type Pokemon, but it's more than that. Lunatone, Solrock, Cacturne, Torkoal, they all fit perfectly into their little pockets of the world. And there was a new diving mechanic that opened the door for the Clamperls and the Relicanths. With Gen 3, the region stepped into the driver's seat and became a designer too. The new art team, with new faces like Takao Uno, were obviously inspired to make those designs, but Hoenn is another reminder that Pokemon don't usually just sprout from a single mind. Take Ludicolo for example. Masuda's nostalgia for Kyushu's tropical and festive vibe gave the foundation, planners added mechanics like weather effects, and artists worked to visually tie it all together with a dancing Duckman. Ludicolo could only come from Hoenn and that team behind it. And if Gen 3 was where Game Freak took world building as design to the next level, Gen 4 was where they did the same with evolution. Sinnoh really leaned in and gave us more evolutions than ever, reaching back generations to give old Pokemon some love. Wimpy little Murkrow became Big Boss Honchkrow. Derpy Rhydon became Big Boy Rhyperior. In Sinnoh, gameplay balance came first, and so it was the planners, led by people like Shigeru Omori, that suggested about half the designs. Diamond and Pearl also introduced the physical special split, so that probably played into their suggestions too. In a Nintendo Power interview, some of the Game Freak staff basically tell us that vibes are king when it comes to evolution, looking at not just balance, but also if it'd be fun or interesting for a Pokemon to evolve, driving their decisions. So, the mix of the planner's mechanics and the artist's instincts are really behind the magic of those evolved designs. Of course, Game Freak carried over all of those lessons from the past too, using the new DS to its advantage, fleshing out the Hokkaido-based world, etc. And as generations 5 and on came, the franchise had to learn how to take those lessons with them into the modern era. Black and White reset the whole Pokédex, creating 150 brand new Pokemon as a fresh start. The design team more than doubled from its Red and Blue days, introducing artists like James Turner and Keiko Moritsugu, and the designs had even more mechanics to consider, like triple battles and seasons. From a director perspective, in Black and White, the director, Masuda, asked Sugimori and team to play up the coolness, so more angles and lines and less rounded edges. And that little touch had a pretty big impact on the designs and vibe we saw in Unova. Each Pokemon was a melting pot of ideas from different people. In 2014, the franchise made another big jump into 3D with the release of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which was also the director baton pass from Masuda to Omori, the same guy that led planning for Diamond and Pearl. With this jump to 3D came a challenge for Game Freak, how to keep the essence of Pokemon alive even without the pixel sprites they developed with. Even in Masuda's book, pixel art is able to carry more visual personality than 3D models that need animation. It wasn't just about making a cool drawing anymore, it was about bringing it to life in a whole new medium. At the same time, Sugimori began stepping back from directly designing Pokemon into a more supervisory role, specifically in Gen 7. Some veteran designers were and still are involved, like Nishida and Fujiwara, but largely that meant newer designers like James Turner and others started having a greater influence on the look and feel of Pokemon. To some, this is the transition where Pokemon lost its magic. Now, I'm not going to downplay the difficulties the franchise has had with janky animations and bugs, but Sugimori was never a one-man show. Yeah, he unified and set the Pokemon vision, but that vision was collaboration. It was a guide that empowered others to bring their creativity into the mix and expand the world beyond one person's imagination. Now, maybe more than ever, you can see the fingerprints of artists, planners, and directors from different backgrounds and generations. Sure, there are some misses, but there are always some misses. When I look at the designs of today, I see Sugimori's success in allowing for a design culture that was able to change with the world around it. I started working on this video because of Flygon, and the funny thing is, I couldn't figure out who actually designed it. But I think that's kind of the whole point. The answer to the question, who's behind your favorite Pokemon, it's complicated. Pokemon are labors of love by a whole team coming together to bring them to life. That could be a classic like Charizard or a new Pokemon like Tinkaton. For me, it's that little orange guy and sick dragon with goggles that I caught when I was 10. Thanks for watching.